Let me introduce our first speaker. First speaker is Bill Calhoun. He's the Executive Vice President and Chairman of Clark Construction. I think he's a member of the National Academy of Construction, and he and I were talking this morning about some of our recollections of our early careers in the industry. He's been very much involved in Clark's growth and also its safety journey. So I think you're going to really enjoy listening to his presentation.
Thank you, Ed. You gave me a promotion. I'm vice chairman of the company, not chairman, but I'll accept the title. It's great to be with you all today. I want to thank Ed and I want to thank Tony Leketich for broadening the dialogue on safety to academia. And I think this is going to undoubtedly yield great results. We impact millions of people on our job sites across the nation every day. And so this is going to affect the outcome of people. We're dealing with real people. I want to thank Burson and Hank and USC certainly for hosting here today. I got out of Georgia Tech in 81. I was an engineering student. And know what I said? I got out. All of us from Georgia Tech, we never talk about when we graduated. We're talking about when we got out. I'm not sure what that means, but it's just the way we refer to that. But I went to work for another large national general contractor for a couple of years. And in 83, I came over to the Clark organization, and I worked around the country in successive assignments into what I do today. So my perspective is that of a builder. Clark is a builder. So I want to start, I guess this green button here is okay. Just a moment about Clark and what we do. So again, you have a better understanding of my perspective. We're a large national, privately owned general contractor, been in business a long time. We operate from offices throughout the United States, and then some of these offices are bigger than others. We do about $6 billion worth of work a year. That's going to click up. We've had a great year in 24 and signed new work over $9 billion, so this will click up. It's a sign of the times. I really want you to pay attention to those bottom two numbers. There are 20,000 people, workers, craft labor on our projects every day. And that's an exposure. And anything we do that impacts their lives to the better and sends every single man or woman home every night the way they came to work is really our goal. It is zero. And then we have about 1,700 folks that are craft labor where we self-perform. We're still one of the general contractors in the business and self-performs a significant amount of the work that we do. A quick vision as to some of the kinds of work we do. We work in both building as well as infrastructure. Our $6-7 billion a year given year is 25 to 30% in infrastructure. We have a couple of road building companies. We do tunneling. And then the rest is building throughout the United States. But a couple of projects you might notice to represent the different product types. Top left is Chase Center in San Francisco. That's sports. We do a lot of sports work. Next, going clockwise, is the Stanford Adult Hospital. We're a very big hospital builder throughout the nation. Bottom right is the most recent addition, about $1 billion addition to the Seattle Convention Center, known as the Annex. And then the project next to that is the ACMA, or Orange County Museum of Art. Between museums and convention centers, we're probably the most experienced in the country among those. We do a lot of that work and have for a long time. And then, not to give short shrift to our civil folks, but that bottom left is I don't know if you can see it, but it's the cutter head of a front face of a tunnel boring machine coming through the rock face for a large water tunnel. So we do also do quite a bit of civil work throughout the country. And then close to home here, I'd be remiss for not pointing out the good fortune we have to be working as a partner currently and have for a long time with USC. Top left is the Rawlinson women's soccer and lacrosse field, which will be ready for fall start of season. If anybody's wondering, yes, it will be. The Bloom Performance Center, I think that field is about ready now for the team to start their practices. Both of those projects we built with the field first so that we could accommodate the needs of the teams and then finishing the structures around them. Bottom right is the Galen Center, a little bit older. Bottom middle, you may not recognize, but that was when we built that was known as the USC Medical Center. I think now maybe the LA General Hospital. And then bottom left, of course, is the baseball stadium. So we've appreciated our partnership, having a privilege to work with USC for a long time and hire their grads. So thank you for the opportunity to be here and be part of this. So Ed asked me if I would think about a couple things as the goals. I think you might have mentioned them already. benefits and implications of what does a safety culture mean. I think that's somewhat obvious where we're trying to get to, but what is a safety culture? Maybe a little bit more elusive in terms of what does that really mean. And then what are the expectations? What are our expectations of grads? And so as I thought about those two goals, four or five things instantly came to mind. And I want to put them forward right up front in case I run out of time here. I want people to be thinking about these, not only today and what I had to say, but really as you go forward in life. I think these are things that are important to think about with regard to safety and construction. And I'm going to start and speak a little bit about the evolution of safety because I think it helps to understand where we've been and where we are as we look for how to improve. And Ed talked about we plateaued and we need to improve. And so a little bit about where we've come from is probably maybe entertaining, but it's also, I think, helpful. One thing that I tell people and I remind myself is you're responsible for your safety every single day. And it's not just a question of did you comply with the rules? Did you follow OSHA? Did you follow your own policies? We talk about rules and tools, but you could be in a situation tomorrow at home. And you need to evaluate, eyes wide open, be aware, be present. Of course, we want to advance our training and knowledge always. That's our responsibility. Part of that is today, but it doesn't stop. Ask questions and challenge the status quo. I'm going to tell a quick story about that. And I think that is a very healthy way to look at life. Because we're going to get to improvements by challenging things that we've always done. And then I think last is accept this notion of safety culture of care. How do we get into the minds and into the hearts, and how do we get beyond the rules and tools? What does that mean? And how do you position yourself inside that and help as we progress? So this picture is amusing. You've all seen it probably hundreds of times, and although it captures a time in Americana, it's entertaining, but it really represents all that's wrong with the thinking about construction. I mean, this is construction's about fearless risk takers, a bunch of old guys sitting on a beam and not having a fear in the world. Nothing could represent the mindset and safety in a construction today worse than that picture. I put together this notional, anecdotal, somewhat time-related talk about safety, and it's not carefully researched peer review, but it kind of takes you from where we were to where we are now. And when I started in 81, the industry talked about construction as being inherently unsafe, and accidents happen. And we all looked at if we even looked at, as a young person coming in, I'm not sure when I even got exposed to safety statistics, but we looked at recordable incident rate, lost time incident rate, EMR. EMR needed to be below 1, which is the modification rate that the insurance industries look at. And if you were doing better than the industry averages, well, you were doing okay. And so that's where we started, and safety became a priority. We started to do, I think the Corps of Engineers may have put us into this job hazard analysis, which was new, and you'd sit down and evaluate the risk of an operation on a project, and it was forward-looking for that entire operation. You did it one time. With the advent of CSIP and OSIP, contractor-controlled insurance programs, we began to have some financial incentive in performance of our job, so we started to focus more. Maybe we needed to focus more on safety because we could make money. OSHA 10 hours and then OSHA 30 hours. Both of them are more like a window. You get trained, you look at some pictures, your eye is tuned into what to look for, but it's a snapshot. It's not an ongoing. And we've evolved. We've evolved into safe plans of action. Some of us do them as we do safe plan of action every day for every element of the work, every crew, or some just before the start of each new element of the work. But we talked about near misses, and are we evaluating near misses? How are we getting to forward-looking indicators? Very much where our thinking is today. And we're talking about a culture. And I think there's great new technology development that we're going to speak some about a little bit later today. But I want to talk about relationships. I think as we get beyond the rules and tools, what do relationships mean in the establishment of this culture of care? And Ed mentioned mental health and suicide, and I am going to touch on that because I think we're going to need to get out of our comfort zone of rules and tools. And how do we get into that area of life which we're not necessarily trained on, which is the human interaction and relationships? And of course, we're at a point today where 0 is the goal, and there should be no ambiguity about that. It's not about averages. It's about 0. And that's where we want to get to. I think before I get into this, I do want to say something else. And when I look at those pictures I showed a minute ago I feel, we've accomplished great things, built great facilities. I think about people. I think about the people in our organization that have grown and grown in responsibility along the way, the great problems we've solved, the partnerships with our subcontractors, the partnerships with our owners. But I also think about people that were hurt along the way. And I think about, one comes to mind, Jose, our whole last name's Jose in 2012, fell 4 feet or maybe a little under 4 feet. And when he fell, he was disassembling scaffolding on one of our jobs. Longtime Clark employee. He fell. He hit his head. His hard hat came up before he hit the ground. Traumatic brain injury. Never could return to work. And so as I look at the great accomplishments of our industry and of our organization, I think about people that I know along the way. And it brings it right forward about the importance of what we're doing here today and every day as we think about construction and safety. So Ed put some stats up there. It's a little bit shorter time frame, says the same thing. One might argue, well, on the recordable incident rate, which is a backwards-looking rate, where the industry is improving. It's not where it needs to be, certainly. We may have gotten better by about a third over the last, whatever that is, 14, 15 years. And you might feel like we're moving the needle, which we are, not far enough. But then you look at the other stat that he showed, and again, a shorter time frame. But fatalities have grown by about a third in the same time frame. So this should be alarming. This should be a wake-up call. What's going on? We need to do better than we're doing. And this statistic sticks with me. So one of the points I made is challenge the status quo. And I'm going to tell a quick story, and I will say that the Clark journey from hard hats to helmets has been one that's near and dear to me and to our company. And it's an example. I don't want to make this all about Clark. I want to make about an example of we did things in this industry for a long time. We wore hard hats. Some still do. And nobody challenged that status quo. But we did. And it came from a couple people high up in Clark when in 2012 I mentioned Jose had an injury. And a longtime Clark employee, these two people got together and said, why did that happen? Did a root cause analysis and were alarmed with the stats that they saw. That many traumatic brain injuries in our industry occur when a hard hat falls off from a fall of less than 6 feet. So there was no requirement to tie off. And why did that happen? And that led to an immediate working with CASC as a manufacturer, manufactures helmets for, I think it was the climbing industry, maybe other. And we learned that the ANSI standard that OSHA requires us to comply with regard to the head protection was mainly for downward force of a falling object. It really didn't deal with side impact, the torsional impact, and it certainly didn't deal with staying on the head in a fall. And so we began developing hard hat with CASC shortly after this incident, 2012. You could see we had a second employee, long-term Clark employee, Nelson, who injured himself. He was unloading a flatbed truck, so he fell off a flatbed truck. Seemingly simple operation. Again, hard hat fell off before he hit his head, traumatic brain injury. So we accelerated the development of the helmet, put it out to our self-performing concrete crews, got the feedback, made some adjustments, got third-party testing, added accessories, the flip-down sun shield and safety glasses. I think we now have a sunshade in the back. And we put it out to all Clark employees, and we made it mandatory. And we began to try to coerce, or probably not the right word, but convince our subcontractors that they need to do this as well. And there was a lot of pushback. They were not well accepted. It's changed. A lot of people don't like change in our industry. And we finally decided, after spending a significant amount of money and trying to control the industry to move our direction, we made it mandatory on Clark jobs. If you're going to be a subcontractor on Clark job, it's written to the subcontractor, you're going to wear a helmet on our projects. Happy to say the industry is largely moving this direction now. We see a lot of it, but it's not all there. And I don't know why, but I like to get the word out. And I often I mention this in talks on occasion, and later I'll get a call from a CEO of a company and say, we listened to you, we didn't believe you, we did our research, and now we're there. So please get your company there if you're not already. I don't have time to play this video, but 2018, Marvin Taylor, concrete labor, working on a slab, didn't fall from height, was cleaning before a wall, a short stub wall for a wall pour. Got his foot somehow wedged, lost his balance, fell over backwards, and hit his head. And you could tell from the picture the crack in the hat would have been a traumatic brain injury. He got up, took his his helmet off and he walked away. And for a long time, I kept that picture on my bulletin board at work because it reminds me every day that we can change the industry and we can impact people's lives. And it's a very clear reminder to me that what we do is really important. So another thing in challenging the status quo, and I think most of the community, the construction community is there today, that we look at these OSHA required rates and we realize there's a lot in those rates which are buried data and they're backward looking and it's hard to use that for predictable actions. Many of you might see a bee sting there, as any good Georgia Tech grad would tell you. That's a yellow jacket. And a yellow jacket that results in a yellow jacket sting that results in a swollen finger or reaction. You might be required to take Benadryl. That's a recordable incident. So is a fatal injury a recordable incident, and a whole lot in between. And when all those things get put in a bucket for compliance with OSHA, we miss critical data that we can use. And I think most everyone is there. I want to give a shout out to University of Colorado, Dr. Hallowell, Construction Safety Research Alliance, which we're a member of. Some great research done to formulate that. What you see, there's an energy wheel, which really, with a lot of really good input and research, shows the origin of where's the energy come from that results over time or manifests it in injuries in our workplace. Clark, like many other general contractors, have taken this research and said, how can we make it work for our company and relatable to the trades in the field as we talk about safety? And so we have, I think it might be Sant who has their rendition of this is, I think it's the sticky, which is stuff that could kill you. We call it the critical 8. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the critical 8 because it's really about how we are thinking about safety today and as we look forward. But along with the critical 8, near miss reporting, we're trying to get to severity ratings on incidents, near misses, as well as recordable events. And we bring all that data together inside the critical 8 and drill down so that we can get to predictability, training, and other actions to really begin to move the needle and try to. And then safety observation reporting. This is something we now require every one of our field employees, our professionals in the field. I think it's 5 per week. To make a safety observation report and relate that into the critical 8. So these are the critical 8. I'm not going to read them. I think there should be no question about what they mean. They're all high risk items at work, categories of work that we perform day in and day out. I'm going to drill down on just one to pick on it to give you an idea of what we do with this. This is trenching and excavations, as you can see on the right. I don't expect you to read all that. It's kind of like an eye chart, but there are 4 controls, and I'll read them quickly. Control 1, implement utility strike prevention measures. 2, evaluate excavation trench prior to entry. 3, provide safe access and egress. And 4, provide appropriate cave-in protection. And then under each one of those controls are unique actions. This is how we look at each of the critical 8. When we train, when we do safe plan of actions with our crews every day, the expectations of our foreman, our trade foreman. Look at what you're doing and think about these things. When we have an incident, we record our incident on a app that we have originated in our company called Safety Suite. And you have to fill out an incident summary report. And in addition to filling out what the severity level of the incident was, and we're now putting near misses into this, and even our safety observation reports at 25, we're moving forward to do this. But the algorithm inside this program will evaluate the level of treatment. It says whether it was a SIF, a serious injury, or a fatality, or potentially could have been, or a non-SIF. How was the critical 8 involved from your report, and whether the controls and then some of these actions were in place or not in place. And from that, the algorithm then spits out, it does a numerical scoring, and it spits out a minor, medium, major, or severe. And as or more important than that, it then says, here's some actions you should take immediately. It could be as immediate as this is really severe, stop the job, have a full workforce stand down and talk to the workforce. It could be bring the crew in, bring the foreman in. It could be bring the owner of the subcontractor involved and our group CEO to have an immediate sit down and talk about what happened, whether it was a near miss or an injury. And so again, we're collecting data as we go inside the critical 8 for predictability and training, and where needed, even disciplinary action. So beyond the work, at this point, I thought, well, I could spend some time and talk a little bit about some of the very interesting technology that we are piloting and where we intend to go with it. But I decided to go the other direction. I want to talk about this mental health issue because I think our industry is just now coming to grips with what does it mean? What can we do? And it's hitting a softer side of life, as I said earlier. This mental health and relationships and understanding how to deal with its human interaction is not rules and tools. And it's a little tougher for us. So we have to recognize that if we're going to move forward. Ed cited some statistics, and they're alarming. 5 times more suicides in construction than at work. I think you had 5,300 workers. I may have a little different data set, but it said 6,000. If we had a little over 1,000 people die from fatal accidents in construction, I think this is 22 data. We had 6,000 or near 6,000 from suicide. So if that doesn't alarm everybody in this room and make you say, we need to get better, and what can we do? Quick note about what we're doing, and I'm not going to read all this to you, but I want to give a shout out to Brendan Bechtel Corporation. Brendan put together a CEO advisory council. In fact, they met for their second or third time yesterday in New York City. Brought the group together to say, let's look at this. Let's be aware of what's happening. What can we do? How do we affect our companies? How do we affect the industry for the better? And so that's working behind the scenes right now. One of the things Clark did immediately is we learned about the LEARN technique. And for those of you that don't know that, I'd say go online. It's a fairly simple an awareness tool, and it doesn't train you to be a mental health counselor, but it's pretty easy to think through it. And I think it's look at what's going on around you, empathize, talk to people, the workforce, where they are, ask some questions directly about suicide. If you get a sense there's something wrong, remove danger, remove bad objects if there's something that is of harm, and then next steps. If your sense is there's something wrong here, the next steps are get them help, get them professional help, get them to a clinic. We trained approximately 25 mental health first aid folks in the company. And I want to say 2 or 3 weeks after we had this training, we had an incident on a job where a worker came to work, shared with his crew that his wife had left him 2 or 3 weeks prior and that his mother died a couple days prior. And he started to talk about suicide and how he had planned it and how he was going to do it on our job. And this immediately, the call, the recognition, the awareness, the call went to one of our first aiders, and they immediately went to the job, sat down, talked to this individual, and it was for real. It was a real dangerous situation, and they got him next steps. They got him to a clinic, got him professional help, and he's happy and alive and part of all the force today. So this is real stuff. And back to the beginning, talked about 20,000 people in our jobs every day. There's going to be a certain number of those people who are going to suffer mentally or have issues, and we need to learn to be aware and not look the other way. Every one of us needs to think about how do we relate to the people, how do we have relationships. And the last item I'll mention is we are now we're thinking through doing some more research and how do we train every person in our company, especially those in the field who are on the first line, to recognize these issues as they come up. And so very much where we all need to be thinking as we go forward, in addition to the technologies, which are really important. So we talked about building a culture of care. As near the end here, I want to talk about looking ahead and what are we doing. I mentioned SOR's safety observation reports that are required of all of our professionals. And when we look at that data that is accumulating now, a large majority of those reports are focused on housekeeping. Okay, and they're focused on housekeeping not because we run sloppy jobs, but it's because that's what the eye sees. Okay, they don't see inside these critical 8 areas, categories. And so looking ahead to 25, the first bullet here, impact hours. We've got a program now where the senior superintendent or the safety director on the job site is going to take 1 hour every week, and they're going to take all the professionals on their job, and they're going to walk, and they're going to talk about what they see. The more tuned, the more trained eye. What do they see on the job? And we're going to begin this repetitive training as to open people's eyes to the real risk categories beyond what is the obvious. And we think this is going to begin to help. And then these safety observation reports are going to be incorporated into our data in the aggregate way with the critical aid. Last two bullets I want to mention quickly. When we do project development pre-construction, whether it's a pre-bid or in a lot of cases we're working in a design build job or a CMR job where we have a lot of time with the designer, we may have 6 to 12 months before the shovel's in the ground. One of the things that we're going to now do much more concerted effort at is planning safety and getting the safety director, which largely start our projects when the shovel's in the ground, getting them assigned to and part of the project development. Are there items of work we can take off the job site for prefabrication? How's the ingress and egress going to change as the phasing of the project changes? How are we gonna rig and hoist the job and crane the job? And so we're getting more focused, responsible people to think about safety earlier. We think this is going to serve to improve the thinking and the recognition of hazards as well. And then the last one I want to mention, because I think this is key as well. When I walk a job with a superintendent who he or she has, it's clear, they not only know the name of every trade foreman on the job, but it's clear from the interaction, there's a relationship there. They know each other. They care about each other. There's an accountability to each other for the way they're working and the quality of the job and the safety of the job. Those jobs have a very high correlation with the safest jobs. So with that in mind, we look at our young people. We hire 200 plus people out of school every year. And as they work in the field, they may be a mechanical or electrical coordinator or some specific part of what we do. We are going to encourage and push and pull so that they have relationships with the trade foreman. If you're a mechanical coordinator, you need to know the plumbing foreman and the sheet metal foreman and the pipe fitter foreman, because I think where we grow these relationships, our folks are going to get a lot of really important feedback and wisdom. There's so much wisdom from the craft in the field that we just don't know when we come out of school. And over time, we'll begin to recognize more. But where we can grow these relationships, I think we're speaking to this culture of care, capturing hearts and minds, and we will emulate some of the better statistics we have where our superintendents know everybody on the project. So that's a little bit about where we are moving ahead. This is a picture of a standout. I'm not sure whether that was during Safety Week, which we do on all of our projects, where we talk to everybody on the project. This could have been the result of an incident on the job where we felt we needed to stop and talk. But this is a little bit about what we do, and we do these periodically on our projects throughout the country. And then I wanted to end with a little bit lighter note. I have one of my grandsons who is obsessed with construction and with construction safety. And as you'll note there, this 5-year-old is always the hit of his neighborhood because he has all the gear. He knows what it is, how to use it. And now we don't have a helmet on him because we don't have children's helmets with chin straps. And he complains because with this hard hat, he can't get what he calls ear muffins. We haven't corrected him because it's cute to hear ear muffins, but he can't get his ear muffins over the hard hat. But he does have he has his orange ear protection. He's got his eyeglasses on. He's got the safety cone to warn people there's a little hole being dug, and long pants, work boots, and looks like he has his daddy's gloves on. So with that, I want to wind up here. See if there are any questions.
Be done by technology to reduce the physical strain on these workers, because average also age for retirement for construction workers is in their mid-40s.
Well, thank you for asking the question. And if I had the answer to that question, we could do great things in our society, but I think you really hit the heart of the problem in what you said. I don't think there's a person in this room probably who hasn't been personally touched or knows somebody who's been touched by drug abuse and a problem in this country. I know I do. I had a nephew that got wrapped up and ended up dying with drugs. I think we as a preconditioned projects drug test. We want to make sure we want subs and we want folks on our jobs that have agreed that they're going to drug test so that we can be a first filter. That doesn't solve the problem. I think you hit on it with construction's hard work, and it results in pain, and it results in care, which leads to drug addiction and people who are influenced by these drugs that they're on. We need to be aware of that when they're on them. We need to keep them out of harm's way in terms of operating equipment or where they could do harm to other people. I think this culture of care where we need to have relationships with people around us, and when something's not right with them, and it could be that it's a drug addiction or they're under the influence of something, we need to be aware of that, and we need to talk. We need to expose it. I think there are programs that we try to get our people into for drug addiction and for pain medicine. And I think awareness, it starts with awareness and awareness of those around you. And I don't have the answer. I don't have a great answer for that. I think it starts with the recognition, which you just did. And then we all need to be present and to push the envelope as to what can we be doing to work with that problem.
I don't have an answer either, but maybe we should expand the definition of safety from incidents, accidents to how much strain we're putting on bodies and how much stress we're putting on
Yes.
mentally. So that's one of my pitches here.
Yeah. Well, I think the other aspect of what you said, I think it really is well taken as well. And we do constantly work on how can we, add mechanization, or how can we take some of the labor intense work off the job for prefabrication work in a factory, or bring some kind of mechanical means. And that's certainly something that we as a group need to continue to think about. And we are making advances there. Unlike a lot of companies, we have a small R&D group. And they're at any one time, they're looking at some of these things that can come from anywhere in the field. Somebody may have an idea, and we've processed some things and done some things to eliminate some hazards, but there's a long way to go in the industry.
I don't want to take too much, but I know many companies have smaller R&D groups, and we as academic institutions, we do research. So I think that's a great partnership opportunity, because you have the data and the real world problems, and we have the resources to do the research. Just leave it there.
Great idea. Thank
Okay. First of all, thank you for your talk. Very, very enlightening. You touched upon cost, and you always see these posters, safety pays, safety pays. And I have a two-part question. One is, does Clark track the cost? And number two, if they do, what's saving? What are the savings percentage-wise? And that could be in many ways. That could be in workman's comp rates. It could be in productivity. Could be in lost time, et cetera, et cetera.
Another great question. I don't know that I have these specifics for you, but we do track costs. We have a lot of self-insured programs, and I want to start by saying that we don't make the safety obviously about cost. It used to be, go back to where we were 40 years ago, 30 years ago. And there was this great animosity of the field that, do you want quality, do you want safety, or do you want high productivity and lower cost? And nothing could be wrong. And if there are people that think like that, they're wrong. Or do you have a well-planned job and plan not just from how you're going to build it, but from a safety perspective, a quality perspective? Well-planned jobs are safer, higher quality, and lower cost just to begin with. So there should be no notion that safe job is going to cost you money. It doesn't. Well-planned jobs are better jobs all the way around. Now, we have, as I mentioned, we're self-insured largely, and we do track them on a regular basis. And we obviously try to save money by eliminating risk and lowering the incidence of lost time and recordable rates. And there's a high correlation. I can't give you a number. I mentioned cost with regard to the hard hats to helmets, because in the beginning, we were trying to push the helmets out into the subcontractor workforce. Those helmets were very expensive because there was one maker, and that was Kask. And I don't remember now, but they were, Devin's here, he may know, they were upwards of close to $100 a pop. And we gave out, I think 1,500 of them, which was a significant cost, but it was our commitment to say to the industry, don't make cost the issue. Now, I'm happy to say there are many manufacturers now that comply with the ANSI standard for OSHA, and the costs have come way down, so that should not be a barrier. But if you think about it on a very granular basis, and you think about an individual whose hard hat would stay on and eliminate a traumatic brain injury, not only do you think about it from a qualitative point of view for the life of that person, but if that person could not come back to work and ever earn a living wage again in construction, You think about if you spend $100 on that hard hat, how much savings were there? But, if you'd like, I could probably look at the insurance savings. It's probably something that's fairly closely held, but we do track that.
It's not a question. I just wanted to say that several years ago, the Construction Industries Institute, CII, published a bunch of papers, which includes a way of calculating how much you save by implementing safety and reducing the number of incidents that occur, and also a little bit about the cost as well. So there is in the CII literature an answer to your question.
We've got a number of products that are being piloted right now, and I'll just pick one as an example. In our road crews, we have a pilot going on. I forget the name of all the softwares, frankly, but where we're doing road work, we have a situation where we have a crash attenuator. Obviously, you're supposed to be working on the safe side of that, but we have a series of 5 cameras, and those cameras are recording all the motion of the workforce for the entire day. At night, that data is uploaded, and there's an AI element to it as well as an engineering element to it, because the AI is learning. And so every night, somebody reviews the tapes of the day, and they point out all of the unsafe acts. Something as simple as, are you working without your glasses or hard hat on? Did you personally enter the restricted zone, this unsafe zone? And from that, both the engineers are looking at that as well as the AI is learning about that. And then there's an email sent to the superintendent every morning so that here are the things we saw yesterday. Sit down with your crew before the start of work. That's one. We're not, using that wide scale yet. We're working on that. And a related one is, and again, on the work crews, there's, I think it's both LiDAR and radar that looks back at the lane that we're working within, again, behind the attenuator, but we're looking at cars. Did they move over? Are they approaching at a fast rate of speed? And if they are, there's some defaults set where there's visual, so the car can see that, as well as an audible, so the workforce can hear that. And so those are 2 examples. There are many more that we are looking at right now, and we maybe can talk a little bit more about as we go on. But thanks for that question, and that's something we should be pushing at as an industry, because I think there's a lot of good could come of that. Thank you.